Other guys, God bless you and thank you for joining us. Well, ZeroHedge.com calls it out. While the political circus distracts us, Flock builds the digital police state.
Why are people saying "flock you, Peter Thiel"?
They moving slow, foot to the floor.
Peter
You
Thiel,
trying to go?
flock you, bro.
Hey,
Peter Thiel, flock you.
Maybe because none of this surveillance works without Palantir's software.
Every time a flock camera falls, an angel gets its wings.
That's right. That's right.
And it's come to my attention that there are several flock cameras installed around our town. My resources count over 30 of them, and I have graphics showing where they are. I'd like to pass here tonight so they can see where these cameras are. These cameras utilize AI to track you and your family when you're out in public. They run by a company, Palantir. This company claims that they just record movement of vehicles and they will reduce the crime rate to zero. However, people much more educated than I on these cameras have proven this to be false when speaking to their city councils. They do not monitor where you drive, but they also monitor where you walk, what you do, what you say, what's on your phone when you walk by, and they spy on you all the time. Today I walked around and I noticed the one down by the bridge was pointed towards the courtyard and the field, not towards any roads. So why would it be pointed towards the river, not towards the streets, if it's just to monitor vehicles? Also, in order to bring the crime rate down to zero, they would need to be able to predict crime before it happens, and I think that that is a slippery slope. Some cities are discussing adding this AI to police body cameras, which would be constantly monitored by an AI, which would make a judgment call about releasing drones, also controlled by this AI. Again, I see it as a very slippery slope, along with the military drones that we've seen used over in Iran and in Ukraine. That is not my biggest problem with these, though. The owner of Palantir, Peter Thiel, is a man mentioned in the Epstein files over 2,200 times, making him the fourth most mentioned individual in the files. He accepted $40 million that we know about from Epstein. The victims of Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell were human sex trafficked, reported almost all members consisting of high-profile and ultra-wealthy individuals, and they witnessed murders, ritual sacrifice, and cannibalism of infants. That being the consumption of human flesh and blood. They use code words for their victims, like pizza, jerky, and grape soda. I have a hard time believing that any human being could do something so evil. This is something that I would be told in a story about vampires. And I don't know about you, but I think that vampires are meant for campfires. They are supposed to be a mythological being, and they're not supposed to be real. And definitely should not be in charge of the security and safety of our city. I believe that any decent person would say no to giving up their safety and security to someone with such little value of a human life, let alone a potential ultra-wealthy pedophilic vampire in the Epstein files.
I have the design drawings, what was approved by Tennessee DOT in 2023. It was crash tested at Texas A&M, tests 360, 361, 362 of the MASH testing standards, and it has a slip plate that's embedded into concrete. It's a fixed sphere. Do you see any kind of stickers? Nothing. There's some flock stickers, but no stickers showing that this was inspected. Let's come back here. We have a Tennessee DOT sign. They're both on the right of way. That one's actually closer to the roadway. This one's much further away. And take a look. You have the lower stub. You have the upper part. You have the inspections. Unlawful to remove. So there's oversight. It's properly installed. And over here, we have a device that ended up on our roadside. Folks, I got the emails. That was approved through engineering. This was approved by an unlicensed administrator. So it's good enough. Folks, that is not the way we do this. It's a privilege to be in the clear zone. We cannot just say, let some unlicensed bureaucrat say, well, just go ahead, do what you want. Dadgummit, whatever will be, will be, and don't hit the post. Don't put uncrash-worthy hardware in the clear zone. Inspect it. Make sure it's been installed in as-tested conditions, because we do that for some. Why don't we do it for all?
So please don't violate my rights. Normally, I wouldn't come to a city council meeting. I'm one of the county's pains in the ass. Historically, I stay out of the city and the city stays out of my business. It was a pretty decent arrangement. But then y'all sent me one of these tickets from one of your AI red light cameras you have deemed as necessary infrastructure in your city. Thing about this is I was in Seminole, Alabama at the time I allegedly ran this red light downtown. How can I be in two places at once, you ask? Don't worry, I asked myself that too. Outside of Scotty beaming me up 30 miles in an instant, the only logical conclusion is I wasn't there. These things have been deemed unconstitutional for this reason, because the enforcement action of 316.0083 unduly shifts the burden of proof to the vehicle owner, me, to prove my innocence rather than the state having to prove my guilt. Currently, I'm guilty by default. I've been convicted by a computer program. Usually this whole mess of who committed the infraction is settled by a police officer pulling somebody over and actually witnessing them in the driver's seat. The AI camera doesn't do any driver verification whatsoever. To get your constitutionally mandated due process, you have to jump through hoops put up by Automated Enforcement Division, a private company in Orlando that's owned by another corporation called Novoa Global, which is owned by a Chilean-Swedish millionaire named Carlos Hofstedt. So not only does this process flow through a private company, our DMV records and personal registration information are accessible by a foreign actor. But anyway, AED sends you this paper, and if you want to fight this thing because you are wrongfully accused, me again, you can't just request a hearing through PPD or the courthouse. Remember, Carlos is involved, so if you have to go through his company, his website, print off his paper, fill it out with enough information to take out a home loan, have it notarized, mail it to the foreign actor, Carlos in Orlando, and then wait for something from someone to tell you about a hearing. This is undue burden even to begin to try to get some kind of due process. Paying is super easy though, go figure. And about that, you can't pay cash. PPD doesn't accept it, and neither does Carlos. According to 31 USC 5103, all U.S. currency and coins must be accepted for all government obligations, fines, fees, taxes, and due. So not only does this whole thing violate constitutional due process, it violates federal law by not accepting U.S. currency to satisfy a government action. Whoever thought this was a good idea is a self-loathing, America-hating, bureaucratic hobgoblin whose pockets probably got stacked with Carlos bucks. You got my attention, though. I'm going to become a more frequent voice down here working to expose frauds and petty tyrants. Congratulations, you all got yourselves a new pain in the ass.
If you ever come across a police officer who's in support of flock cameras, just know that they use those for mass surveillance of the population. And there's 18 documented cases of police officers using flock cameras to stalk romantic interests like ex-girlfriends, current girlfriends, wives. So they actually use these cameras to benefit themselves in stalking cases. So there is a reason why some of them like them.
So of course I had to find some proof of these cameras doing more than just reading some license plates. So check it out. Here's a guy walking down the street and he catches his camera taking pictures of him with no cars around, just tracking him and his face as he's walking down the street. And these are next to your splash pads, your schools, your parks, places where you and your family just rest. This is getting out of hand.
They're not tracking just cars. I'm going to show you. See how it's starting to flash right there when I'm walking towards it? They're taking pictures of faces because there's not a car in sight. And if I'm not moving, watch what it does. Watch what it does when I'm not moving. So watch what happens when I start. Oh, there it goes. I started moving. It's tracking. So there's no car in sight. There's nothing in sight.
Now listen as this guy explains the different types and their capabilities. Some of these things have microphones on them that listen for key words, and they're not even just, it has nothing to do with just license plate scanners. The capabilities of these cameras we will probably never know fully.
This particular device does not have a camera in it. It has a very sensitive microphone connected to AI. It listens for, quote, sounds of distress. The only way it can detect sounds of distress is if it's always listening. And then what is the threshold for a sound of distress is a matter of policy. When the news segment aired, they showed me sharing my concerns about how this technology is going to be used.
Cameras have been found at bike paths, nature trails, public parks, wilderness areas, community pools, reproductive clinics, schools and preschools, entrances to state parks, gyms and recreation centers, children's gymnasium rooms, and also on children's playgrounds. And so it can't be just about plate tracking. This is about people tracking. Why would they put them in these particular areas right there where there are no license plates? There aren't even cars driving by. This isn't about your safety. This is about overall control.
And then unfortunately there's terroristic organizations like DFLOG, whose primary motivation is chaos. They are closer to Antifa than they are anything else. And that, I think, is unfortunate because we don't want chaos, or I don't want chaos. I like law and order. I like a society that has a bedrock of safety. So for those groups, I think it's just disappointing that they haven't chosen a more constructive mannerism to try to get what they want, which they have a right to have, but that's why we have a democratically elected process, right? Like we're not forcing flock on anyone.
Community members raised concerns that the system could allow federal agencies to access its data.
Flock security cameras that are present in Woodburn contribute to the terrorizing of our community.
City Council in November suspended the use of the cameras while the police department conducted a full review. That report confirmed what many people were afraid of, that federal agencies had accessed the system.
We're not forcing flock on anyone. Elected officials know that as a community, you want to be safe. As a family, you want to be safe. And flock is the best way to create a safe community.
I'm not sure DFLOG would agree with the terroristic label that you put on them, but okay.
Were officers arrested for using flock cameras to intimidate and stalk citizens. This brings the total to 21 officers arrested for this.
Just yesterday in Greene County, a deputy was arrested and fired. Quenisha Goss accessed flock data for personal reasons multiple times over the course of 3 months without law enforcement justification. A similar story in South Georgia. 5 Albany officers were arrested on Monday. You see their names listed there. The GBI says an internal audit found that the officers used the flock system multiple times for non-law enforcement purposes. All of those officers have been fired. And just a few weeks ago in Cherokee County, our own Atlanta News First investigation found these 3 deputies have been fired for allegedly misusing flock. Sergeant Mike Creedon, Lieutenant Chris Ryan, and Deputy Cynthia Jodeci were all charged earlier this week.
And let me remind you, these are only the ones that we know about. These are being investigated. People are finding that this is happening in other towns as well.
We all want to keep helping the flock camera companies by continuing to give our facial recognition and geolocation data to them, right? So the best way to keep giving them their data is to first cover your license plates with an infrared blocking film or spray. You can do the same to your windshield and driver and passenger side windows. And then cover your license plates in what is called an adversarial AI sticker or decal. The adversarial AI stickers and decals have nearly invisible dots and patterns that definitely help the flock camera see your license plate more clearly. And the best part about all of this is it's nearly invisible to the naked human eye, so you're not impeding law enforcement if you get pulled over. Now, for some reason, these spray stickers and decals can be illegal in some states like Florida, which I don't know why they would be illegal if we're helping out the flock camera companies and police scanners. So just make sure you read your local state laws before applying any of these things. So let's all continue to be super helpful to the flock camera companies and do this to our license plates, windshields, passenger, and driver side windows.
Leave flock cameras alone. There's no need to label all the flock cameras in your area. And don't put plastic bags over them either, because all that does is cost the company time and money. Grow up. I know that you can use a $50 high-powered blue or green laser like this one to permanently blind flock cameras, but come on, guys. Why? Definitely do not use the camera map on dflock.org to find cameras, approach them from behind on foot with a spray paint extender, and spray them. And if you do that, at least make sure that you have your phone in your pocket so we can identify you using the Bluetooth and 5G. There is no reason to spend $20 on a hard hat and high visibility vest and then buy a $30 Sawzall with diamond tip blades to cut down the entire pole.
No reason.
That's because the cameras and solar panels are clamped with a simple 8mm socket, so you're just doing too much.
Yes.
The cameras have about 12 hours of backup battery, so they will be transmitting Bluetooth and 5G that we can use to track you. So under no circumstances should you put the camera inside of a Faraday bag while the battery runs itself out and then break them down for parts, because that would prevent us from finding you, and nobody wants that.
Nope.
If you do any of these things, it's important that you do not buy a pair of Vader facial recognition blocking glasses, because then it would be impossible for us to identify you and charge you with a class 4 misdemeanor, which is typically just community service or a small fine.
You don't want that.
And for the love of God, do not attend your city council meetings and demand that they cancel your city's flock contract. We need these cameras. Peter Thiel is a benevolent overlord, and we should all be grateful that he loves us enough to keep us safe. Grow up.
Big Daddy, Big Mama, Nanny State, who wants to put flock cameras everywhere. That's the other thing I think y'all should do is ban flock cameras in this county. You know, if they want to put them on private buildings and spy on us like some little peeping toms, that's one thing. But to use our own property that we have to maintain to gather data on us, I mean, this is 1984 Animal Farm, and they even calling us animals. Flock. It's a flock of sheep. It's a flock of shit is what it is. Adios.
Fauci and Joe Biden had the flock surveillance system during COVID, half of us would be in prison right now for going to church and rightfully defying the mask mandates and the lockdowns.
They're creating a massive national surveillance dragnet so that every time you step out of your house, you're picked up into that dragnet, and everything that you do between the time that you walk out of your front door to the time that you go back inside, it's all being recorded. And just so we're clear, when you get back home, it's not like it stops. The surveillance state doesn't just end. No. You have plenty of devices all over your house, from your cell phone to your smart TV to your smart refrigerator. They are listening to every word that you say and keeping a record of everything that you do in your own home. To be paired with your flock records, to be paired with your Palantir profile, and all of the other surveillance records that are being kept on every aspect of your life every single day.
While Americans remain transfixed by the political circus, cheering for their preferred party, jeering at the opposition, obsessing over every manufactured outrage, and waiting for the next spectacle, the surveillance state continues its steady march forward. Your government is watching you. It watches where you go, whom you meet, where you worship, what medical offices you visit, what political rallies you attend, what protests you join, what books you read, what website you visit, and what causes you support. It watches through your phone, your car, your doorbell, your appliances, your purchases, your social media accounts, and the cameras positioned along the roads you travel every day. This is how freedom dies in the digital police state, not always through dramatic declarations of martial law or soldiers stationed on every street corner, but through the gradual construction of a technological dragnet, an electronic concentration camp so pervasive that privacy becomes impossible and anonymity becomes suspicious. Enter Flock Safety, a private surveillance technology company whose automated license plate readers have spread throughout thousands of American communities. These cameras, which do much more than photograph license plates, represent the next evolution of the government's public-private surveillance partnership. They document the time and location of every passing vehicle and record identifying characteristics such as its make, model, colour, damage, roof racks, bumper stickers and other distinctive features. That information can then be placed in a searchable database and used to retrace a vehicle's movements over time. Yet the real power and the real danger of Flock does not come from the cameras alone. It comes from artificial intelligence. A camera can photograph a car. Flock's AI-powered platform can identify and categorize a vehicle, compare an observation with stored records, generate alerts, identify connections, and help police reconstruct where that vehicle has been. AI is what transforms a photograph into the building blocks for a suspect society. With AI, every driver becomes a data point. Every data point becomes a pattern, and every pattern becomes a suspicion. This is how ordinary movements become potentially suspect and subject to government scrutiny. A police officer might ask the system to locate every red pickup truck with a ladder rack seen near a protest, every vehicle that repeatedly visits a particular address, or every car observed travelling between two locations. The artificial intelligence does the sorting, the database supplies the history, the government receives a list of potential suspects. This is no longer surveillance conducted by individual officers following particular leads. It is surveillance conducted at machine speed across entire populations, with algorithms deciding whose movements merit further scrutiny. Just consider the scale of what is taking place. License plate cameras now log approximately 20 billion vehicles every month. 20 billion, guys. That is not targeted policing, that is mass collection. The overwhelming majority of those scans do not involve stolen cars, wanted suspects, kidnapping, or violent crimes. They document ordinary people carrying out the ordinary activities of daily life. Driving to work, taking children to school, visiting friends, attending church, keeping medical appointments, participating in protests, or simply going home. Yet each one of those innocent journeys becomes part of a searchable police database. At 20 billion scans a month, Flock is not searching for particular suspects and then attempting to follow them. It is recording the movements of everyone so police can decide later whom they want to follow. That is the digital equivalent of assigning a government agent to trail every driver in America and preserving the agent's notes in case the government someday finds them useful. Yet mass collection is only the first stage of the AI surveillance state. The next is merging those billions of observations with everything else the government and its corporate partners know about us. Flock is also part of a much larger shift towards AI-powered data fusion, in which license plate records are combined with facial recognition results, surveillance video, police reports, social media activity, commercially purchased information, gunshot detection alerts, and other government databases. The danger is no longer merely that one system can track a car. It is the merger of previously separate streams of information into a single system capable of mapping a person's movements, relationships, habits, and associations. These systems increasingly do more than provide officers with information to evaluate. They assign significance to associations, flag supposed threats, and generate investigative leads, often through proprietary algorithms that neither the accused nor the public can ever examine. And artificial intelligence, well, that does not eliminate human prejudice at all, or institutional bias, or bad information. In fact, it industrializes them. Feed a flawed system inaccurate data, biased arrest records, or constitutionally suspect surveillance, and AI can reproduce those defects at a speed and scale no individual police officer could ever match. Once the computer labels someone suspicious, moreover, officers may treat the algorithmic conclusion as objective fact. The machine accuses, the police act. The citizen is left to prove that the machine was wrong. Despite the extraordinary reach of this technology, Flock continues to portray its system as a limited, carefully controlled crime-fighting tool. Yeah, right. Flock insists that its cameras collect information about vehicles rather than people, then agencies control access to their own data, that searches are logged, and that information is generally deleted after 30 days. Do you really believe that, guys? Yet these assurances largely amount to distinctions without a difference. Our vehicles are extensions of the people who drive them. Track a vehicle long enough and you know where its owner sleeps, works, worships, shops, socializes, seeks medical treatment, and participates in political activity. You know when someone leaves home, when they return, whom they visit, and how often. You may not know the contents of their conversations, but you know enough to construct an intimate portrait of their life. That is the police surveillance state. Communities across the country are finally beginning to recognize the danger. Some cities have terminated or declined to renew their Flock contracts. Others have paused deployments or demanded stronger restrictions on data sharing, retention, and federal access. The resistance is long overdue. We can't afford to become so distracted by the theatre of politics that we fail to notice the architecture of tyranny being assembled around us. The surveillance state does not care which party you support. It does not care whom you voted for. It does not care whether you believe you have nothing to hide. The cameras are watching, the databases are growing, and the networks are connecting. Welcome to the beast system. How about we just get the flock out of here, yeah? We read in Romans 3 verse 10, "As it is written, there is none righteous, no, not one. For all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. Wherefore, as by one man sin entered into the world, and death by sin, and so death passed upon all mankind, for all have sinned. For God sent not his Son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be saved. The Lord is long-suffering towards us, not willing that any should perish, but that all should come to repentance. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have everlasting life. If you confess with your mouth the Lord Jesus and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. For there is therefore now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. For by grace are you saved through faith, and that's not of yourselves. It is the gift of God, not of works, lest anyone should boast." In Jesus' death, burial, and resurrection, we see the price was paid in full, as we read in 1 John 4:9. "In this the love of God was made manifest amongst us, that God sent his only Son into the world, so that we might live through him."